Hello and welcome to the channel for another Japan tournament video. This is the Tokyo Area 2 Wave 2 Top 8 round of the tournament. It's going to be an exciting one. I've got a cool matchup for you in this video. You already know by the title and thumbnail. It's going to be Zoro versus Doflamingo. Doflamingo being the deck to beat in OP10, right, just like it was in OP09, is going to have to face off against Zoro, a very threatening deck, especially if you don't have the right pieces. So looking at the deck distribution within this top 8, there's 4 Doflamingo left in this one, 2 Marshall D Teach, 1 Zoro, obviously, in this video, and then if you saw in the last round against Shanks, Usopp making it into the top 8. So Usopp not only being the first OP10 leader to have multiple appearances in one of these Japan CS top 16s, but also being the first leader to make it into the top 8. Before we get into the match though, I just want to let you all know that I am not the official live stream. I'm just watching the VOD of the actual tournament itself. So if you want to go check out the actual tournament, you don't want to hear me talk and stuff like that, link is in the description below. And then a quick word from our sponsor. I also want to quickly mention that this tournament, our broadcast of unique English commentary, is sponsored by Nen Garden. You've probably heard of Nen Garden before and seen their designs, right? Their Gear 5 Luffy playmat being one of their most popular, and especially if you're preparing for OP9, they've got this stained glass 4 Emperors playmat here for you now. Whether you're a fan of One Piece, obviously, right, or other series like Dandadan, Chainsaw Man, a personal favorite, or even Jujutsu Kaisen, you can get an extremely high quality playmat with stitch edges, rubber backing to trick out your different decks and times that you go to locals. If you're interested in a playmat from their site for yourself, do not worry, you can save 15% off at checkout using NEN15 as a code, and then if you want, you can save even more money by using my promo code Atrocious for 20% off your first order. Nen Garden's got really cool, unique products. Love their styles and mats, and definitely should go check it out if you can. All right, so this matchup, it's going to be interesting. There is not much different than what we've saw in times past, right, within these two archetypes, the Zoro. Although I don't know the official build as of this video, we'll show you deck lists afterwards. We can probably assume that Zoro is the way that it's dubbed, with the Tony Chopper kind of animal build, as it's been part of kind of half Straw Hats, half Drum Kingdom Tony Chopper animal type stuff, has given the deck like a new wave and a new style of playing, right? Zoro style with that simple leader effect, Dawn ×1 your turn. All your characters get plus 1,000 power in the turn. You swarm the board with a ton of kind of smaller bodies and do just a lot of chip damage swings throughout the match. So we're going to see if it can overwhelm the Doflamingo, right? The Doflamingo has plenty of opportunity to swarm just as much as the Zoro, but we'll have to see if Zoro's bodies can stick on the field, because the difference between these two decks is that Zoro's bodies are much smaller, right? Much more common to be like 4,000, stuff like that, while Doflamingo's bodies are all pretty much, the lowest is 5,000 power. Also, just to let you all know, especially for you usual watchers of the channel, this is going to be the last tournament video that I do in this hotel room. For anyone who doesn't know, I was at the Gundam TCG World Premiere event over in Houston at the time of this recording, and just with going to that event and like trying out the cards and stuff like that, I've got a couple videos that I've been doing in this hotel. So this is the last one, I promise. But let's go into the actual match. And so we got the both players starting hands. All right, I think the Zoro player did eventually mulligan for this one, so got a Tony Chopper blocker from EB01. That's that card that was noticed in Trafalgar Law during the end of its tenure before the ban. Also has a 1-cost event, Shut Up and Come With Us, a very nice event to be able to play down different characters on the field. You've also got a Hiking Bear 2K, and then also these two guys right here. That character there is Robson, basically a Dawn ×2 gains rush. The Doflamingo has a little bit of good stuff in his hand with that Perona, you know, reordering of the top deck, and then Sengoku also finding a piece of the puzzle. You got a Boa Hancock blocker, which will be nice if your Sengoku can find a Marshall D Teach or a Jinbei things like that. And then also has a 2K Dracula Mihawk and also the Jozu. So I gotta say, I really like the Doflamingo starting hand a little bit more. The Zoro, you know, you really want the Tony Chopper that finds and plays characters, not the blocker one. But we'll just have to wait and see how this goes, as the Zoro on turn 1 does dawn and pass the Doflamingo, starting out with the Sengoku, right? Usually when you have Sengoku and Perona in hand, you always start out with the Sengoku first to find a piece that you may want and then go ahead reorder. So lots of searching in this. Is going to be bottom decking another Sengoku, Perona, and Buggy in there. So grabbing the 2K right there and then using that Perona to end the turn. Gonna reorder the top 5. Really gonna control the next couple turns of this match. So, ooh, not too much 7 Warlords of the Sea kind of cards of the 4 costs that you can use. Is probably going to put the Sengoku on top and maybe try to use that Sengoku in the coming turns, right, to be able to hold on to this pace that he's got going on, but has the Trafalgar Law there. Trafalgar Law gonna be really nice to bounce any kind of character that comes on the field, right? Puts one of your searcher or reorder cards back. Might try to do a thing where they use the Trafalgar Law to put the Perona back to then play the Perona to put that stuff at the bottom of the deck and really try to find some different key pieces of the puzzle. Could be something that we see. The Zoro in this turn looks like they're just going to swing 5, and it's going to be at lead, trying to get a card right here, and is going to get a life. It's going to be a Martial D Teach, which is very, very nice, especially for the consistency of your deck. I do really believe in Martial D Teach. I know it's kind of a card that some people haven't adopted in the West, but I do believe it's very, very strong for the deck and a great way to play it. The Zoro, though, before it can do that, plays a Tony Chopper, the one from OP08, that on play when attacking looks at the top 5 and finds a nice card to be able to play on the field. The choice of that going to be this Tony Chopper. This 3-cost Tony Chopper allows you also to play a 3,000 power or less character onto the field. So looking around in the hand, what can they play? They can't play the Robson, so can only play the Hiking Bear at this point. The Hiking Bear is nice because your Hiking Bear allows you to attach Dawn onto one of your characters, but it has to specifically be an animal character. So like you can't attach it to the Zoro leader. It has to be to another character, and passes off the turn right there. The Doflamingo, thinking about what they want to do. They know that Trafalgar Law is at the top of the deck, but maybe trying to think about what character they would want to put back in the hand, both for them and the Zoro opponent, right? The Zoro opponent does have 4 in hand. No Dawn Up to use that Shut Up and Come With Us, I think it's called, and is going to go ahead and use the leader effect, play the Law, and grab the Sengoku back. The Sengoku is going to put that big Tony Chopper down and in the hand, and then that 7,000 power swing going at the rested Tony Chopper to control the board of the field, right? Especially in this matchup, you want to control Zoro. You want to make sure that he runs out of gas and then constantly go in and chip away at life before they can really build anything on the field. So he's going to pass off the turn as the Zoro goes to 5. Does have a Makino there, but doesn't have any 1-drops to really pair with the Makino, right? Very, very nice if you play like the 1-drop Namis for the Straw Hat kind of search in the build, or maybe even a 1-drop Dr. Kureha, right? Could be nice, especially for these Tony Choppers. So is maybe thinking about, after attaching this Dawn, just going ahead, swinging 6, and it's gonna be about board control, right? Who can run out of gas first, who can run out of resources in this match. And this 6K swing is just gonna be a nice buggy 2K to get out of it. Kind of a couple 2Ks in the hand to be able to flexibly use, and so that Tony Chopper coming down is going to go ahead and play potentially a character if they can find the right one within the top 5. And looks like they do have a Robson in the deck. Also, that Dr. Kureha, as I mentioned, a viable character. And that Robson gonna be nice if it can survive in the turn. That's the big thing, though. It's gonna be tough for it to survive, right? Being a 4,000 power character, Zoro's power up only happens on your turn. So Doflamingo now going into 6. Dawn does have a perfume femur now, so could be thinking about at some point playing the Martial D Teach, right? Especially maybe to get this boa blocker online, or maybe you just go in and you use the Sengoku first, right? The Sengoku first would be able to help you maybe try to find a specific piece that you may want within the deck, right? Especially if you want something like the Law being able to bounce back the different characters is real nice for characters that haven't yet swung, like that Tony Chopper that continuously plays down characters on the field. You could also potentially play the Jozu. Jozu could be really nice, but after playing this Sengoku, Jozu not really in the cards for this one. Does find a Weevil, right? Has a Weevil and a blocker Boa that they can grab, as well as a 2K Crocodile. I think maybe Weevil is what they're aiming at, maybe trying to just draw a card, garner as many resources as possible within this game. Could see the Martial D Teach come down in order to get that Weevil played from the top of the deck, right, and in the hand. He's going to go ahead and use this Sengoku. I do like this play. You want to kind of use these one-drop searchers at times to battle these different characters, right? Kind of starve your Zoro opponent out of resources. And so 3 Dawn left in this one. It's a perfect amount for a Martial D Teach move in this turn. And so that 4 is going to go ahead, take a knockout, not wanting to use any of the counter in the hand, especially with a 5K swing coming in from this Zoro, and then also the 7 from the Doflamingo. So does find a Tony Chopper blocker on that life. Going to be using the Martial D Teach to put the Weevil on top. And so the Weevil now, through this leader effect, is going to replace that Sengoku that swung and draw 1 card. That card that's going to be drawn is another Boa, so a little bit of non-counter in hand, but you do like the Boa now that you have the Martial D Teach, right? Your Martial D Teach, as long as it doesn't swing, is probably not going to get KO'd at all. So is going on that 7,000 power swing to use the Shut Up and Come With Us event. It's going to be able to search and play down a character from that top 5, that being that 3-drop EB01 Tony Chopper that I was mentioning. It is going to go ahead and take that 7,000 power swing, right? Going to put that in hand. Going to be a Dr. Crueja to potentially do some searching later, or maybe combo well with the Makino. Drawing another blocker Chopper for turn. That's 3 of them now in this game that he's seen. And we're going to see after attaching for this leader what they decide to do on the 7 Dawn turn, what they decide to work with. Is going to go ahead and put 2 on the Chopper. If that Chopper swings, it has a when attacking of minusing 2,000 on a character. So is going to swing 7,000 power, I believe, at the Law, right? 2 for the Dawn, and then 1 for the Zoro leader effect. Going to swing 7 at Law and -2 the Weevil, right? So is going to take that knockout. The Weevil goes down to 4,000 power. And so now these other characters might be swinging at that Weevil to really control board. He could have a play at this point where he plays down like the Dr. Crueja and then goes in with the Tony Chopper, right, for a swing, and then uses the rest of the 3 to play another one of those EB01 Choppers. Could be nice, but is going to use the Hiking Bear. Remember that Hiking Bear is 4,000 because of that Zoro leader effect, so is going to match the Weevil, and a 2K out of it is going to keep it alive. The Tony Chopper now swinging at it is going to be a nice 6,000 power swing, and is going to go ahead and look at the top 5. Does have a couple different options. We see Goldie, Roger, and Dragon in this deck. I do think as a red deck, right, Goldie, Roger is definitely a good like 1 or 2 of to have in the deck, even though no decks search for that card. Just a super powerful rush card to be a finisher within the game if you or your opponent are at 0 life. So is going to go ahead, play that Robson, right? Another body on the field. And after taking a KO on that Weevil, is going to swing 6 at life. And so is taking that life, moving to 3 life each. Actually is a considerably close game at this point, I feel like. And the Zoro is going to go ahead, play that Dr. Crueja. I think we can definitely expect off of that Dr. Crueja, even though it is going to only find a 1-drop blocker Tony Chopper, right? because it looks for Drum Kingdom or Tony Chopper cards. I think it's going to be a really good option, right? Especially when you talk about that Makino in hand. If that Makino stays in hand and is not used for counter, it's going to be able to make that Dr. Correa swing big numbers alongside the Zoro leader effect, right? So is thinking about playing over this Hiking Bear. You got to think about the different options of what you want to play over, and it decides to play over the Dr. Correa actually. So curious to see that, maybe not thinking about the Makino play at all, maybe just thinking that the Makino is more valuable as a card for counter rather than the power up in this specific situation in this matchup, right? So does play that blocker chopper over and continues on the turn. The Doflamingo now, plenty of Dawn 8 exactly, and plenty of options to be able to utilize that Tony Chopper right there. Just flipping the other way, you know, it was kind of bothering me a little bit, so glad they adjusted that. Everything rotated the exact same way, but we move alongside in this turn, right? How much can you actually control the board within this matchup, right? There's a lot of cards that are starting to populate on Zoro's side of the field, right? Especially 4,000, 5,000 power characters in all of these Tony Choppers. And so it's going to be interesting to see how he decides to approach this. The Corona may be able to get in and do some battling. Probably not. I think it's a little bit too low that you don't want to commit really Dawn to it, but something like a Jozu and a couple swings that may come in could be nice to pop back maybe the blocker or things like that, but maybe instead eyeing up something like the Boa blocker, the Gecko Moria that's in hand, right, to grab another card, something like Weevil, right? You could play the Gecko Moria first in your turn to be able to grab something from your trash, to then use Marshall D. Teach to switch up your leader effect, right, and play that character down from the field. So it's all going to depend on what he actually wants within this turn, what kind of play he wants to make. Has 6 on there for the Jozu, would be able to use that Marshall D. Teach and still use leader effect, and is going to go ahead with that Jozu, put the Sengoku back in hand to maybe do a little bit of searching later, and is going to eye up which one they want to go for. I think going for this blocker chopper is fine, right? You can go ahead and swing freely now at this character with your leader. And so now we decide through the Marshall D. Teach effect, right, who we're going to put on top of the deck. Probably, I would think, a Boa blocker or maybe the Gecko that is in hand, right? You could also, if you wanted to first, you could play this Sengoku, right? Because Marshall D. Teach puts 2 rested Dawn on your leader, you have 1 extra Dawn theoretically to be left over, right? So it's all going to depend on how much power you want to actually swing at this Tony Chopper. So is going to commit that Dawn for the Sengoku, is going to look at the top 5, does find a Jinbei. So Jinbei, a great card in combination with the Marshall D. Teach, going to work really well with that Boa or Gecko, whichever they decide to do, in order to get one of those in play. I would imagine the Boa, right, because Jinbei puts something in as active, even though it comes in rested. Jinbei, one of the premier cards that has put this deck on the map, and one of the strongest blue cards in this deck in general. And so is going to go ahead and swing 7, maybe thinking about whether or not they want to go at life or one of these 2 characters, right? There's a couple cards in hand now for this Zoro, being able to pick them up. So you got to think, how much counter do they actually have in that hand? How much usable counter do they have in this hand? Do you want to go at this blocker chopper or maybe the chopper that swarms the board, right? Which one is more valuable? And eyeing up that blocker chopper, I do like that play, right? Being able to minus your character's 2,000 power is going to be so good for being able to control the board, and especially now that this Jozu's come on the field, right, and the Jinbei has been found, we're starting to stabilize and we're starting to see the power of this deck. So is going to go in now and have the Jinbeis on top in that Boa search, and that rested Dawn is going to go at the Marshall D. Teach and swing at that chopper. Or I'm sorry, the leader swung at the chopper. The Teach is going to swing at the Robson, I believe. And a nice Robson counter to keep that guy alive. So Dofi really starting to stabilize at this point. The Zoro gonna have to see what they have in store. Their big cards not searchable at all, I feel like, right? You have the Dr. Cruejas and Shut Up and Come With Us event, but none of those can find Revolutionary Army, Roger Pirates cards, right? So you're gonna have to hope to draw into them, and the more that you do searching, right, the more likely you are to bottom deck those different cards, as we saw earlier in one of the previous searches. So is gonna go ahead, swing, I believe, 5,000 power now with this Hiking Bear at the Marshall D. Teach. This is gonna be a key point because Marshall D. Teach, as we've talked about in previous videos, is such a key card, and gonna see how many resources they're gonna commit into this character. So swinging Robson now at this after doing a quick boa block is gonna take the knockout, and still plenty of Dawn left in this turn. I believe 7 Dawn in total, right, on a 9 Dawn turn. And so is gonna use that Hiking Bear effect to give a animal type character 1,000 power, is going to give that Tony Chopper an extra boost, and now the Tony Chopper is going to swing 7, what looked like at the Jinbei, and so now is going in and going to find a 3-drop Chopper. This 3-drop Chopper is so nice in the deck in combination with your Tony Chopper search to be able to play different characters down. So might play this other Robson in hand, right? Or no, can't play the Robson, I'm sorry. The Robson is 4,000 power, and the only character that they can play is that 1-drop blocker Chopper. So are they going to play it is the real question in this one. Could be interesting because you want the little 1-drop Chopper. It's easy to bounce back, but would cost resources, and that 7,000 power is going to go at the Jinbei. You've got a little bit of counter in hand, right, with the Mihawk, the crocodiles, and the gecko, but is deciding to let that one go. Says, you know what, you're probably going to swing at this boa, and I want to keep this boa alive more than anything, right? You have the gecko in hand to combo with the Jinbei. You will be able to use Jinbei again if you want, but is going to attach 9 as I'm drinking my hotel coffee and swing at the boa, I believe. So is going to need 4,000 in counter, which is just 2 2Ks, right? But the more 2Ks that you burn, the harder it is down the road to be able to stay alive, keep your characters alive. I do think this boa you need to keep alive, right? It's going to be a really nice blocker, especially for some of those smaller swings. We've seen them kind of swing 5 a little bit, and so the boa is an easy block. But especially with the Marshall D. Teach, if you had been able to keep the Marshall D. Teach alive, maybe you would let this boa go, right? To be able to grab it again, put it on the top through Teach effects, stuff like that. But decides not to keep the, or decides not to use the counter, I'm sorry, and plays the EBO1 Tony Chopper down to be able to get a second blocker on the field. So we're starting to see kind of the strength of the Zoro deck, right? If it's able to control the board, it is definitely a threat. But now on a full 10 Dawn turn, both players still at 3 life. That's the big thing. They've just kind of been chipping away at each other's board, trying to see who can falter first in this one, right? It's going to be curious as the Doflamingo top decks the Jinbei. So is going to go ahead, I think, play that Gecko down to maybe have 7 Warlords of the Sea type card. You could see an effect happen where you play the Gecko, you grab Marshall D. Teach back, right, because it is a 7 Warlords card of 4 or less. You play that 7 Warlords down, right, for 2 Dawn, you still have 4 left. You use the Marshall D. Teach effect, put 2 Dawn on, get Jinbei on the top, the one that you top decked in the turn. And then from there, you use Jinbei, play the other boa from your hand, and you keep the momentum going in this one. But decides with the Gecko to grab the Trafalgar Law. So very interesting. Is probably going to go in with this Jinbei and play the Law, right? Not using leader effect, but no, goes for the boa. Okay, so the boa is going to be able to at least rearrange, does find a Jinbei, right? We did know that Jinbei was on the top of the deck because with the last boa search, it was Jinbei, Gecko, right? So is thinking through this reordering what you want to do, right? You grabbed the Trafalgar Law, and so now it's like, oh wait, do I want to save a step and maybe have the Trafalgar Law on the field? And is going to go in with that Trafalgar Law off of the top, put Sengoku back, swing 7 at that rested Chopper, and with the Trafalgar Law is going to put that blocker Chopper back. And so here playing the Shut Up and Come With Us is going to find another blocker Chopper, and you get to play that on the field. You don't get to block with it though. I think that's a great sequence to really recognize, right? The blocking phase and the counter phase are 2 different phases, right? So the blocker phase comes first. If you opt not to block, you can't go back after doing a counter event, right? you have to either counter or let it die. So good sequencing there. And for those of you that don't know, that's how that kind of works, right? If you do play a blocker from that effect, is going to use a EB01 chopper and a Tony chopper that looked like Sanji, right? The new 2K from OP10 to be able to get out of that swing and keep that guy alive. So is going to start off the turn attaching one to leader, right? Something that we see pretty much every turn from Zoro. And is going to go ahead and use that chopper to swing and minus the Jozu, I believe. So 7,000 power now, minusing the Jozu down to 5. Jozu is kind of the biggest threat, I feel like, in this field right now. As a 7,000 power character, it can swing huge numbers right at the field. So is going to, I think maybe swinging at the Law on that 7,000 power swing, not the Jozu. And so now is going to use the Tony chopper. I think swinging 6,000 power at 5,000 power is going to go ahead and get another Tony chopper to play on the field. And let's see if they actually play anything from hand. They do have another EB01 chopper blocker, I believe, but opts to not play anything, and the Jozu is knocked out. So now in a turn like this is where you start going at life, right? You have cleared the board of all of the rested bodies, right? You have no other bodies to swing at. So now your efforts are trying to just go at life and try to take as much as possible, whether that's life cards or counter card. So is going to take that first one, just a 1K Marshall D Teach, and does have that 3-drop Zoro in hand. So you could see that Zoro come out on the field in maybe the next turn, right, to do potential finishing moves of some sorts. Opts to not play it in this turn, decides to swing 8,000 power with this Robson right here. And so is going to go in, take this life, and swing another 8,000 power with leader. Going to be just a strong performance right now. Is going to go ahead, block this last one, and use the different 2Ks, right, to go to 9. What 2Ks do you exactly use on this swing? Is going to go ahead, use the Dracul Mihawk. Did they go 2K, 1K? Oh, no, blocked with the Boa, so the Boa is 6,000 power, right? And then use 2K, 1K to go to 9. I was correct in that I had to go to 9, but I forgot about the block. There's so many swings to keep track of. Within this matchup, you have to make sure that you go through every single one, and with all the power manipulation as well. It's definitely a crazy time watching this matchup and seeing this in action, right? Kind of a long game too. Usually Zoro games don't go that long. And so it's kind of interesting to see how this one has been a true battle, it feels like. But now we're going into the Doflamingo's turn right here. Does have a Gecko to be able to swing at a character. You do commit a couple Dawn to the Gecko. Is going to swing 7,000 power. I think it's actually at lead. So is going to kind of put the Doflamingo or the Zoro on a little bit of a clock. Says, you know what, I'm not going to go for any of the characters anymore. I need to be able to go in for games. So we're going to see if this Zoro can do it. Interesting that this Gecko did not swing at a character and instead went for life, because you can't win in this turn, right? You don't have Rush Usopp in your Doflamingo deck, or at least I think 99% of Doflamingos don't have access to a Rush card. And so what do you do with the rest of this Dawn now? Is going to go ahead and swing the Boa. So the Boa is going to go 6,000 power, not committing any Dawn to it and leaving it exposed with no blockers. I think is going to go at the Robson right here. And so is going to take care of the Robson. Interesting to switch up going for life and then characters right on the field. Does have plenty of Dawn to work with. Does have, I believe, a Jinbei in hand, and I think Trafalgar Laws. There's no more Boas, I think, in his hand. It's kind of hard to tell. That's why I'm kind of like leaned in a little bit. But the Trafalgar Law, if you do play those guys down, right, would be able to bounce back different characters in hand that could be a threat to you. And so is going to go in with the Jinbei, play that guy down, gets to play another character. It's going to be that Law. Law going to pick himself up to put that Tony Chopper back into the hand, the one that spams the board. Maybe doesn't want to see any more Robsons, right? You do know that your opponent is playing Robson because they've revealed a couple of them in the deck. So if that Tony Chopper finds a Robson, might spell trouble, or maybe an EB01, little guy there. So is going to think about what the rest of this Dawn, what they want to do on this. Are they going to clear board, or are they going to go in with an attack? That's going to be the real question. And is going to swing 7, use that leader effect, play another Jinbei that they knew that was on the top, and is going to play that Law again. Thinking about putting a character back into hand. Could be this Gecko. I do like putting this Gecko back in hand, right? It is a rested character, but maybe wants to put the Law back in hand to redirect an attack, right? With the Gecko in this battle for board control, you may want to put a rested character, or you may want to put an active character back in hand to be able to redirect attacks and have like an indirect blocker, but goes for the Jinbei. I do like the Jinbei, actually, thinking about it. We usually don't see Jinbei come back in hand through the Law effect, but is going to be very nice to go in and have the Jinbei for later to maybe spam another set of cards on the board, and is going to go ahead, find a 2K buggy, try to secure life within this turn. Has a couple 2Ks in hand, 3 2Ks into 1Ks, and the Zoro has to hit twice in order to win. Here's the thing though, if the Zoro does not win in this turn, it's going to be really tough for him to not be able to win in this turn. So drawing Diable Jambe for a turn. Oh, Diable Jambe, not a great card that you want to see. You have that Rush Zoro in there, so you have access to 4 swings within this turn. So how do you map the Dawn to be able to get in? Having 4 swings is going to be really nice, right? No blockers on the field. You just have to get around the counter cards that are in the hand. So what are the exact numbers in this one? Is attaching 3 going to be an 8,000 power swing with this Tony Chopper right through leader effect? Is going to be 2 2Ks, right? Very casual to get out of that swing. What do you do with the rest of the Dawn? And this is the problem with Zoro sometimes when you're going for a game and your opponent has a large hand that has had filtering, you know, being able to grab specific pieces through searches, is that your characters start out being very small, right? 4,000 power. So when you're trying to push game like this, it's hard to invest a lot of Dawn in these different swings. And so now as you're the Zoro, what do you do? Do you commit 3 Dawn again for the other Chopper and swing another 8? It looks like he is going to do that, is going to take that life. Gonna be a Perona. It's not a 2K, but it is a 1K, and so is just gonna go in with 9 right there, and it's gonna be a slew of counter, right? 2K, 1K, 1K, 1K to go up to 10, and the Zoro could not get the finishing move. Had to think, I think 9K is better than 2 6Ks, right? Or I guess could have been a 7 and a 6, which I think still requires the same amount of cards, right? 2K, 1K, and then 2K, which is essentially what he did, right? Just a little bit different. So the Doflamingo now going into overtime turns is going to be turn 1 in this one, is going to go ahead, swing 8 at the Zoro. The Zoro, plenty of cards in hand, but only a few amount of 2Ks in this one. Does have 2 Machinos and is going to use them right there. We're going to see how much they have available to them. It looks like just a bunch of 1Ks left in the hand with the blocker choppers and stuff, and finding that little chopper with the brick, it's going to be tough. The swing there, nice 1K, swing there, another 1K, and then going in with the Doflamingo, 2, 4, 6, 11,000 power is going to scarily get the win. It was very close. I feel like the Zoro did an excellent job in that matchup, just finding a little bit too much momentum, right? Especially once those Jinbei started coming onto the field and playing down those 4-drop Trafalgar Laws, really helped within the board control, because you can remove 2 bodies on a single turn, right? With using the Trafalgar Law on leader effect, you can take out a body through a KO, but then also put back a body into the Zoro's hand, right? Not on the field to be able to swing. So very interesting match, very cool to see Zoro and how it interacts with the Doflamingos in the top 8. But let's look at some sample deck lists from this event. So we don't have the exact Zoro list from this, but based on other lists that I've seen, and then also just what we saw in that match, this is probably decently close to what the Zoro list looked like in this event, right? You're playing kind of the Animal Drum Kingdom type package that has kind of revitalized, as I mentioned, the Zoro, especially with the addition of this Tony Chopper, right? Being able to help swarm the board, looking at the top 5 for animal type characters, and then playing a couple different animal type characters in the Robson, right? The Tony Chopper, and Hiking Bear as one of your options. Since you have like 30 different cards named Tony Chopper, including this new Tony Chopper from OP10, this Punk Hazard kind of type, the Dr. Crueja makes a lot of sense because looking at the top 4, you have so many different options, not only within Drum Kingdom, right, in like the Robson, the Hiking Bear, but just Tony Chopper in general, right? You have this guy right here, this guy right here, this guy right here, this guy right here, and a couple of these guys to be able to find, you know, more often than not a card off of that search. Zoro, very fun deck, very cool deck in a lot of different ways and situations. Is definitely a one that if you're looking to make a deep run in a tournament, maybe a fast run to catch a lot of people off guard, this is a cool deck because even sometimes when your opponents know what they're supposed to do, your deck just being ultra consistent at that very quick swarming, if your opponent's off the beat for even a turn, it could spell disaster in a game. So very cool list. Also relatively cheap list as well, especially if you listen to my Market Watch videos and you bought like your EB01 Choppers and your Monkey Day Dragons, and maybe you pulled a secret rare Gold D Roger out of your OP09 booster box. It's a very cheap deck to build for the most part. So this isn't the actual Doflamingo list. This is another Doflamingo that made it within the top 8 of this tournament. We know our Doflamingo that we watched advance in the top 4, so some of the ratios may be off, but this is pretty much the same list, right? A lot of Doflamingos look very similar in the game. It's just a very strong archetype. It just matters, you know, the couple cards that you want, that ratio, and what you want it to be. The Doflamingo 7 Warlords of the Sea type package, very good, especially when used by Jinbei. Jinbei being able to cheat out other characters has made this swarm kind of control effect of Doflamingo so strong in the metagame, right? Has plenty of opportunities for searching, reordering, swarming down different characters that control and bounce back other characters on the field, and then having what I consider to be one of the better cards in this deck. Not necessary, but allows you so much flexibility within your game plan. Martial D Teach, right? Being able to use that Martial D Teach to manipulate what you're using off of your leader effect, especially in the early turns of the game when you don't have too much Dawn, right, to invest, but you need to continue piling down these 5,000, 6,000 power characters that you have on the field. Jozu also being a premier blue card, just so good, especially when you're playing little baby 1-drops, right? Like these Peronas. You've got these Sengokus in here. Maybe you played a Buggy earlier in the game. You want that 2K back in hand. I keep saying it. Doflamingo, just a great deck. I think it's the best deck in format. Hands down. I don't really know if you can argue too much with it. But that's going to be all in this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you appreciate this one. Again, this is the last one in the hotel with the kind of sketchy Wi-Fi and the audio stuff like that. So we'll be back home to do the rest of the next couple tournaments. Appreciate your support. And thank you again, Nen Garden, as our official sponsor for this tournament. And hope to see you again in the next one soon. Check out my affiliate link of Nen Garden in the description below. Go for it.